Just remember not to talk too loud.
Yes, we are currently upgrading the audio of the show, so please bear with us while we do that. This is the Jimmy Doane Show.
Father's Day.
Father's Day, that's right.
What is today, the 15th or something?
Today's the
17th. June 17th, 2018.
That's right. I am Counselor Curtis, lawyer to the stars. This is Jimmy Doane is right in front of me here.
Yep.
He is the economic advisor to the Queen of El Moria, among other things. And we are coming to you live twice a week these days, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard on YouTube. This channel, hopefully, is coming through to you. And we are the OG Libertarian Podcast. We were a Libertarian podcast back before Libertarians were popular and podcasts were popular.
We're talking about literally the late 90s. We were a Libertarian podcast.
And we had a full blown podcast in 2005.
Yeah, we had a studio and everything.
Yeah.
And that was unfortunately we lost one of our members.
Our engineer.
Engineer, that's right.
That's right.
So anyway, a lot of news today.
What do we got?
Okay, a couple things now. We do have the trade deficit and the IG report.
Okay.
But I'm not really prepared that much to talk about them.
Okay.
With one or two exceptions.
Right. Got to mention the IG report at least a little bit.
Yeah, no. On the IG report, it's interesting. I have here the newspaper. There's one of the articles here in the newspaper in the Gainesville Sun this morning. And it has to do watchdog Comey insubordinate, not biased in Clinton email probe. Well, bullshit. I mean, the fact is maybe we ought to start off with that. Do you got any information on that?
I think the same information that you have, which is
it was interesting. Let me just sum it up a little bit. The report was actually sort of balanced.
Okay.
Sort of.
Okay.
It reminded me a little bit of Comey's his testimony in front of Congress, I believe it was, in right before, about 2 or 3 months before the election, where he outlined all of the transgressions of Hillary, and then said, "Never mind."
That was his press conference,
right? Press conference,
and that was just a couple of weeks before the election. That's basically the laughable thing about this whole situation.
Right.
Is it looks as though Comey was trying to legitimize. He says he was trying to legitimize Clinton's victory, and yet he may have been the nail in the coffin that.
Well, his second one, a couple days before the thing, when he said they're going to reopen the investigation,
right?
And because before that he'd said it's closed,
right?
So anyway, that was like, Clinton, of course, went around blaming everybody, but that was one of the things she blamed, not herself,
right.
Of course, but
right, and he deserves some blame for that. I mean, it's a bonehead move.
If you go through again the IG report, a couple of things that come up. One is, if you listen to the lefties, the Rachel Maddows and those people, as far as they're concerned, this is the nail in the coffin for Trump.
What?
Oh yeah. Oh no. The super lefties say that this proves.
This is
now you have to understand nothing in this thing about Russia. This was all about the other stuff,
right?
And so the point is that as I say, the Rachel Maddows and some of the other people said that this is the nail in the coffin. Impeachment is on its way, and so forth. Then there were some people like Ben Shapiro, who's a conservative, who outlined kind of and a little bit. So did Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy. He's on Scott Adams is on Periscope,
right,
a couple times a day,
right. And so what did they outline?
Well, they said they balanced it a little bit. Said this was not really a treasonous offense, but on the other hand, there's this thing that said we're going to get him, or what. There was some quotes in there that looked pretty damning, but Scott Adams said, well, let me just tell you, that's a quote, and the attorneys for this guy are going to argue, here's another way to look at it.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the first thing that I thought of. Is it says, the quote is, we won't let him, in response to the question, is Trump going to become president?
Right.
Well, we don't know who. He might have been saying, we we won't let him because we're gonna vote against him.
Or you and me.
Right, you and me won't let him, because we're going to vote again or whatever. It's not an official. That's a totally circumstantial piece of evidence. You can draw a hyper negative inference from it.
Well, there were three or four quotes in there that aligned the line saying, but all were explainable.
Well, and here's the thing: show me the financial records. Show me something that was destroyed or manipulated in some way that the FBI would do. That's.
Well, you're right, but the other thing was that they went through and found out that the people that had been investigating Hillary and had basically said she's okay.
Right.
They were the same ones who were investing in Trump.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Same crowd.
Okay.
And so to a large extent, and they were all Hillary supporters.
Right.
They had.
Look, I think it's clear. It should be. If it's not clear to everyone, it should be at this point that the FBI, prior to Trump's election, or certainly the Justice Department, was biased in favor of the Democrats.
Right.
And the actions that they took, there was a soft bias or whatever. The actions that they took exonerated Hillary and led to the Trump prosecution. And this is, from my perspective, this is the oh crap! I just said something. I lost it.
Well, anyway, Comey. The deal was that there's a lot of people that said.
Oh,
go ahead.
The higher loyalty thing. This goes back to Comey and his higher loyalty situation. As far as he's concerned, he doesn't have to be loyal to the Justice Department and the FBI because he has a higher loyalty. And of course, manifestly, what that must mean is sort of his image of what's right, which comes back to subjectively him, basically. So he's loyal to himself. And through that effort, he found a way to exonerate Hillary. He just changed the law in his mind. He just changed the standard of intent. And anybody who's a lawyer knows that that she should have been prosecuted under that law if you're going to enforce that law.
He specifically said, "I can find no intent."
Right, but she didn't need intent. You didn't need intent. That law specifically says negligence is good enough, and she had previously been called grossly negligent in the handling of that information. So, but whatever. As I've said, that's one of those lame laws as far as I'm concerned. But then the fact to turn it around and start to do the same kind of stuff versus Trump, I think like he said, like Trump says, double standard.
Right.
So,
witch hunt, whatever.
Hopefully, Comey will go down as just a bad.
Well, it's interesting
FBI
because
guy.
there are some people that root for him, big supporter, shouldn't have been fired, blah blah.
Still,
but as I said, when you look at the spectrum, there are people that say this completely exonerates Trump. There's no question about it. There was no nothing.
No.
Some of the liberal, the really conservative people said, what this proves is that the FBI was out to get him and blah blah blah. And then so there's this spectrum.
Right.
It's a bell-shaped curve, and but it's interesting to see that people have preconceived notions.
Right.
Makes perfect sense.
Now, this was not like the IRS going after the Republican groups.
Right.
This was, show me that kind of connection, and then we'll talk. But a few emails back and forth about who they preferred to win and that kind of stuff. That's no big deal. I still trust the FBI.
Ooh, not me so much.
Well, I have no problem with the FBI. They and hopefully.
Well, there's thousands of them,
right.
And obviously some of them are. But a lot of this stuff comes from the top down. So
agreed. And it can be, and they fired the guy. And
right.
Comey's out.
Yeah,
so
right.
As far as that,
right.
And if I were Trump, that's what he should do. He should continue to clean house in these administrative agencies that appear to be biased in some way or another.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, that whole thing. So then so that was the IG report essentially, to some extent. Again, there's more stuff to come out over the.
Yeah, we'll see. And full disclosure, I didn't read the 508 pages.
I didn't either. I listened to 2 or 3 summaries of it.
Right, me too.
And some people that had read it.
Right.
And because Ben Shapiro was one, and so had Scott Adams. And Scott Adams, of course, he's starting to move all his stuff over to YouTube and Facebook or whatever because he's a guy to listen to. He's really good. master of persuasion. If you ever get a chance to listen to what, you don't think so?
No. I do. I fully know. Our engineer was a certified hypnotherapist, as you recall. I actually have a certification in neurolinguistics programming.
Well, this is what, of course.
Got dragged into it by the engineer?
By the engineer, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I guess we could talk about, although I couldn't, there was a beautiful, trade deficit is a big deal. Now, not the trade deficit, but now the war.
The tariff war.
The tariff war,
right.
And is good news or bad news? We don't know. And
I think the issue is what you saw. You're talking about the China,
right?
So China, Trump said he was going to impose tariffs on China, and he comes out with $50 billion.
Right. And China immediately retaliates with $50 billion.
Okay.
Which goes in some of his don't go in until for another couple of weeks.
Okay.
But still. When you look, I talked about this, I think, in the last time, and that is when you look at the list that they made up in order to come to that number, it's really strange stuff. I mean, it's a wire that's 20 centimeters long is this tariff, and if it's 21, then it's this. I mean, when you see the way this stuff's broken out, I mean, you talk about minute.
Right.
What are these people doing?
They believe that they're picking targeted industries.
Right.
They think they're so smart that nobody is going to react to what they're doing. They think they operate outside of the market with these tariffs. Like China's not just going to impose $50 billion in retaliation, just like they did. So of course, or people will find alternatives. I mean, there are so many ways around it. This is just a big turd in the market, as far as I'm concerned. We talk about the elephant and on the soccer field, basically. This is a giant elephant that Trump just put down there and says, we're going to have this big old tariff. I mean, to me, again, this is like a lot like putting the gun to your own head and saying, don't come near me or I'll shoot. Because what can he possibly do? What is he going to do now? Raise it to $100 billion?
Well, again,
more specifically target something else. I mean,
well, I think that most economists that are reasonable realize that tariffs hurt the home country more than anything. And one of the things, give you an example. We've got people in this country that use a phenomenal amount of Chinese steel to make their products.
Right.
Well, that stuff's going to go up. They've already announced price rises.
Right.
Which is.
I think it could be argued that it certainly hurts the host country proportionally in the same scope as much as it hurts the country that it's supposed to be against.
Right.
Because both peoples are trying to trade.
Right.
And they're trying to trade to gain the benefit of the trade. And so when you put that barrier in there, you destroy that benefit. You're literally destroying the wealth, or you're absorbing it into the government. Right. And you are destroying it because you're preventing these industries from expanding naturally, growing naturally, innovating naturally.
It's another tax, is all.
Right. It's another tax. It's a wet blanket over whatever industry on both sides.
Right.
So that's why I say it's it hurts you. It hurts. I shouldn't say it's like pointing a gun at your head. It's more like holding the bomb, strapping the bomb to yourself, and saying, I'll blow us both up, kind of a thing. You can't win. You can only kill the other guy. You can only take the other guy down too. And so, maybe Trump's concept is if he hurts them really bad, they know that we can survive because of the rest of our economy, and so they'll cave.
Right. I think that's the idea. I think that's
hopefully.
And of course, then Justin Trudeau has chimed in on some of this stuff because we have some of the same tariffs with.
Well, that was a $12 billion one, and the Indians just put up a $240 million one, similarly.
And we have some problems with our EU people as well. So. This is one, again, shades of Smoot-Hawley from 1930. This is, I just don't believe that any good can come of this. It seemed to me there would be other ways to do this. This is a sledgehammer to kill a fly, and I just...
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the only good that can come of it is in the end of it. At the end of it, when it's finally given up, but...
There is one little minor saving grace that comes along, and that is that Trump did cut the business taxes.
Okay.
So for the what do you call it, the capital gains tax
Right.
on businesses from whatever it was, 37 to 22 or
Right.
something, and that's going to help some because that would tend to lower their prices. It was interesting. I was having a chat with Mrs. Jimmy last night. She unfortunately doesn't know a lot about economics because what hard to believe. She said that with the tariffs now the other businesses will be able to lower their local businesses will be able to lower their prices. I said, no, you don't understand that. Since the tariffs now, there's another 25% buffer of profit. And I said, one of the ways that people get into business is they look out and they see a business that's making these huge profits, and they say, now I can get into it. And this is kind of the way. I mean, I remember the first time I learned this was when the Apple first started and when I was selling the Apple IIs in 79, 80, and 81 and 82, and the profit margin for us was like 40%. And I mean, we were buying them for 40% less than we were selling them. And of course, Apple was doing even better than that. I mean, they were going through this. They were selling to us at a 50% markup or something like that. So, well, it didn't take almost any time at all before Compaq and all those other people started to get in the business, and the price of PCs dropped dramatically. And that was competition for Apple, and of course their prices had to come down as well. Anytime anybody sees these huge profits, businesses are going to jump in there, and basically competition breeds lower prices and higher quality, or
Right.
a combination of the two.
Right, and the tax, like the tariff, is just going to distort the market,
Right.
and distort
Again.
people's perception of how it goes. So.
Well, anytime the government gets involved, there's a distortion. They're picking winners and losers. I mean, think about it. On the tariffs, there's like a list of 800
Right.
things.
Well, and I forgot to mention our sponsor today.
Huh.
This show brought to you by corn.
Yes, I have. I had a thing on that, as a matter of fact. So
For all of your transportation needs,
yeah,
corn.
yeah. So anyway, let's dovetail into that.
Sure.
The Scientific American reports that roughly 40% of America's corn crop goes to manufacture ethanol added to gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it goes almost without saying that ethanol, which is an alcohol, burns basically hotter than regular gasoline.
Okay.
And until they modify, which they have now, of course, the computers to take care of a lot of this stuff in the fuel injection and everything, the ethanol tends to destroy your engine, and in a shorter time, number one. But the deal is that this was a mandate to supposedly help us with the energy crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anybody will tell you that, as Lewis Black, who's a great comedian, one of my favorite comedians, says, we have corn that's food, and we're using it for transportation. I mean, what on what planet can you take food?
Well, if you can, then as far as I'm concerned, do it if it's economical. But what we have here, well, right, and that's what we have here is a huge distortion in the market because the government, as you say, mandated that this ethanol be added to the gasoline, and that required these manufacturers and refiners to produce or to purchase this corn, which vastly drove up the price of the corn.
Yeah.
That distorted the feed market all over the place.
Yeah, because corn is a staple for cows and pigs and so forth.
A lot of people eat corn. Tortillas. Right. I mean, corn is
the only
big.
saving grace is we are coming into corn time, harvest time, like this week. And fortunately, over here at Publix, we will now finally be able to get 6 ears for $1 or something.
Well, it's great stuff. But the point is that you don't need to have a distortion in the market like it brings when you mandate
right.
this type of a thing. Now, they were doing it because it's a, quote, renewable resource.
Right.
You can grow more of it. And theoretically, I've heard people talk about hemp oil. I don't know what the I don't know how flammable it is or anything. I don't know. Obviously, people burn it, but I don't know if you could use that as some type of a fuel. I mean, from my perspective, if you could grow a plant that spit out 100 proof alcohol, great, awesome. But if there was that out there, you wouldn't need a mandate.
Right.
People would grow it anyway
Right.
because it's there, because
Right.
it's available.
That's right.
So it's obviously not as good as fossil fuels still. You know, I hear
No.
people talk about all the time, oh, you know, I heard someone say the other day, there's more money in solar now than in coal.
Yeah, well, guess what? No.
Okay, and I don't care if there is. That's great.
Yeah.
If there is, then let it go there naturally. But the truth
Right,
is,
the market will figure it out.
Right.
And one of the little because the government, of course, subsidizes a lot of this stuff. People don't realize what goes into, say, solar or wind farms. The manufacturing part of this,
Right.
is huge. I
Right.
mean, they're, you know, it's once you get it in, that's fine, but they ain't free.
right.
You have to pay for that and the installation and the upkeep. And I was looking at videos on that people have taken of the wind farms when the motors blow up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Well,
Not to
wind
mention all the
farms
birds
are
that die.
like horrible boondoggles. That and the reflecting farms, the ones that reflect the light at the boiler and that kind of stuff. What a joke! I mean, to me, if here's a couple that are good. I've seen some nice renewable ones. The surf bobbins.
Yes.
That float underwater and just go up and down and drive pistons and generate water. In fact, you know, the ones I know off Australia actually pump water and make steam. They don't. It's not like a direct transference,
Right.
which you'd think would be much better. But the point is that there are sources that don't interfere with the rest of our lives that can be utilized, but they're not efficient enough yet,
Right.
in terms of, as you say, the production costs,
Right.
to beat coal. I'm sorry, coal is awesome. It's a rock that burns. You just light it on fire, and all you have to do is chip it out of the wall.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that.
No.
I mean, that's pretty much even easier than pumping oil out of a well. So either way, those are the sources right now, and everybody doesn't have to worry about it because give it 20 or 30 years, and the efficiencies in those other technologies is going to beat out the coal and oil.
Well, not only that, what happens? They're talking about that we're going to. They've been talking about peak oil for 40 years or 50
remember,
years,
yeah.
and the fact is that you know we're going to run out of all this stuff. No, we're not. All that happens is that it becomes more expensive to get, and now other technologies can compete with it. But I mean, if the price of gasoline, you know, think about it. The price of gasoline in Europe right now is like $6-7 a gallon.
Okay.
And here it's almost $3.
Right.
And everybody's panicking because it's gone up from $2.29 to $3. You know, it's still not that expensive, and people make adjustments. I know personally, I have gotten to the point now, even me, just because of wear and tear on the car stuff. But I've made sure that don't go out until I have 2 errands to do. You know, and I circle around.
Mm-hmm.
And people make adjustments on a daily basis. They make adjustments, and to try and mandate this one way or the other is insanity. Let me just see here.
Well, are they going to do away with the corn subsidy?
Well, this was an op-ed piece,
right,
where the guy said it's time to get rid of it.
That
because
seems to me a pretty indefensible one, and I would think people could
unless you
shame
happen
the
to be a
supporters.
corn guy.
Right, but I would think you could kind of shame the supporters into.
You would think, but I'm telling you that the ag industry, which is interesting because the ag industry, which constitutes 6 or 7% of the GDP
Right.
in this country, has a huge. I mean, they have a lobby in Congress that just won't allow them to do it. The same thing with the sugar people. You know, there's like 3 people in the sugar industry. They're here in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
What's their name?
Faneuil.
Faneuil, yeah, right. Faneuil, yeah, whatever. But I mean, there was a movie made about it with Burt Reynolds, which is a little bit of fiction, but pretty much on the nubbin. But the point is that the reason we pay 3 times or 4 times the world price for sugar is because of those guys.
Yeah.
And
well, I would think that somebody, I mean, you know, the watchdog groups, you know, the W.R. Grace report or something, somebody would come out these days with some reports about the industries that are being favored by government.
Well, you know, you want to know who was really libertarians are the Koch brothers. They have said that they're going to spend $100 million on telling the American people about what's wrong. You know, like you say, the Grace Commission, and now the Koch brothers, and they're pilloried because they're just horrible rich people. But they're planning on spending some real money to talk about how we can get by with less government. So, anyway, of course, they're oil barons, so they're right away are horrible, nasty people. But okay, so particularly outdated flood by oil due to the effects of modern fracking. So that modern fracking, of course, floods the market with oil, cheaper, less expensive oil and gas than as I say, as the Arab price or whatever it is starts to rise towards $60 or $70. Well, the fracking people come in there and find out, and they got to look ahead, because you can't fire up all this stuff again in North or South Dakota and then suddenly have the Arabs say, well, we're going to lower it to 50. You need to be able to look ahead and say, well what happens
do that.
if
they know that.
I know that.
They knew that since the
They're
plan.
the experts, certainly not the people in Congress. So let me just see here. Mandate. Yep. Okay. That's about. Let's see. Ethanol lobbyists say that RFS, whatever that is, promotes economic growth. But the I forget what that is. That's the RFS is the mandate, I guess. Is more like a tax increase than economic growth. Again, the ethanol producers, for obvious reasons, think that they're great. They have a vested interest in keeping it. If you have sugar beets or whatever the hell it is that produce all this stuff that can produce ethanol. And it also is interesting because ethanol, for what it's worth, is way less expensive to produce in a place like Brazil. And you could actually import it if you needed ethanol that much. It would be way less expensive to import it from Brazil. As it is, we ship liquefied natural gas all over the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd think that would be a losing deal. Anyway, that's that. Let's see. There is a Supreme Court. Did you notice that it says here that states cannot impose a blanket prohibition on apparel such as T-shirts and buttons bearing political messages in polling sites? The U.S. Supreme Court said on Thursday in an important free speech ruling, striking down a Minnesota law that is as unconstitutional. Did you read about that?
No. Say that again.
What happens is, apparently somebody walked into a polling place with either a MAGA hat on,
right,
or a "Don't Tread on Me,"
right,
something that was a political statement,
right,
and you're not supposed to do that. So they, they kicked him out.
Right.
Apparently he changed his shirt or something and then did get to vote, but it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no, you can't do that.
Can't wear the shirt?
Yeah, no, you can wear the shirt.
Okay.
Free speech. And Minnesota was upset because they had, as we do here in Gainesville.
Yeah, we have rules about 50 yards away from the polling place. You can't.
You can have all your. You'll notice the way you tell where you're within 50 yards of a polling place here in Gainesville.
Past the perimeter of signs.
There's one in there somewhere.
That's right.
The signs are like hunting dogs that point.
That's right. Well, I mean, I suppose you could say,
look. Anybody that is going to go vote has made up their mind. There's not you don't walk in there wondering who you're going to vote for.
Oh, I know, it's a stupid law. I mean, to me, that's what I was about to say is, look, the only thing I can think of as justification for the law is you don't want people to not go down there and vote because they're worried about someone screaming in their face about who they should vote for. You don't want somebody to go, you don't want people to be literally harassed, that's to say. Vote for this guy right here, come on man, come on, or whatever, stuff like that. So they said, look, you stay 50 feet away when you got that stuff, when you're campaigning.
Yeah, and of course.
But a T-shirt, I mean, that's like, you're not doing anything unruly, you're just wearing clothes.
Right.
And I agree, from a strict standpoint, but it's kind of nice that the Supreme Court would say, it's a damn T-shirt. Get over it.
Yeah, get over it. Pretty much. Well, I thought it was interesting because it was a 7-2, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there were the two liberal ladies said, you can't do that, and they, interestingly enough, some of the other couple of the libs and the conservatives all said this is a restriction on free speech.
Right.
So anyway, let's see, Minnesota.
Oh, speaking of the free speech thing, we should touch real quick. Did we mention the guy from Tennessee last week on the freedom of expression situation with the cake, related to the cake incident?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we talked about that. Is that he won?
Well, we talked about the magnificent cake case, but what we didn't talk about, I don't think, is the quote unquote beginnings of the backlash.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That is what happened after the magnificent cake case was some guy in Tennessee put out a sign that said, no gays.
Oh, right. We did say.
I think we did mention that.
Yeah, because what happened was he's been pilloried,
right?
And everybody's boycotting his store anyway,
right?
Even
and that's what we expect would happen. That's what we believe is the best solution to the whole thing. You don't need a law to prevent him from doing this.
No.
Let the poor guy bury himself.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It is stunning, of course, how people don't trust the market, because the market here in the United States is 320 million people, all making independent decisions on a minute-by-minute basis, and to try and what collectively all this is going to do is a fool's errand.
I agree with you, but I think people look at the market as some kind of statistical map, and they don't think of it as individual actors so much, or nearly as flexible as it is.
It is unbelievable. As I said, it's just as I just said.
It's as flexible as...
Gasoline goes up 10 cents, literally, and that day, people change their habits.
Well, the market is at least as flexible as all of our independent wills times all of our independent wills.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, Jesus.
And on a minute-by-minute basis, practically.
That's a lot of variables.
No.
So.
And for anybody to think that they can see that, a committee in the government to say, gosh, we can figure this out. No, you can't. Mm-hmm. There's more decisions made on a minute-by-minute basis than there are neurons in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that's the ultimate reason why central planning
never works.
Exactly.
Well, it's interesting.
Or not as well.
One of the things that I love is that people don't quite understand is IQ is not additive.
Right.
If you have a committee of people that all have 120 IQ, if you have 6 people, that's not 1,000 IQ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people would say that the room's IQ lowers to the lowest point.
Yeah, right. It does. It does. Okay, so anyway, there was quite a bit on that. I'm squinting still. I still haven't figured out my thing.
That's unacceptable.
That's unacceptable. I do have. Okay, I got a couple of kind of lightish things here that I want to go over. The first is here in Florida. Mm-hmm. This is another article, which I think is kind of interesting, and this is no DUI for sheriff's officer who was arrested, employee after a crash. What happened was this lady, and this is in St. Augustine, which is interesting because St. Augustine is in St. Johns County, which has a beach patrol that's like the mafia. And if you happen to have even a closed beer can hidden away in the backseat of your car, it's like $50. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, St. Augustine, deputies with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office who responded to the scene of a crash. They found this lady in a little Honda Civic crashed into a ditch. And it smelled alcohol on her breath. Her admission that she had drunk a lot, she admitted on the spot, had a lot, went to a party, I'm driving. And so anyway, at the end of this, when they got there, the vehicle was still running with the lights on. He found that the blue Honda Civic was in the ditch alongside Carter Road, and when asked how much she'd had to drink, she said, well, I've had too many to count. So the deal here in Florida, there's a couple things. Number one, her fine was she was given a letter of reprimand.
Was she an officer or something?
She was an officer.
Of what?
In the St. John's. They didn't know it at the time. As soon as they found out that she was one of their cohorts,
right,
nothing.
Right.
She gets a letter of reprimand for conduct unbecoming an employee.
Right.
That's what she gets.
Right.
Okay. Now, here in Florida, if you have a point, what is it? A 0.11, 0.101. No, it's 8. I'm sorry. A 0.801.
0.08.
0.081, yeah, whatever it is, which is 0.001 above the legal limit.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people, let me tell you something, a lot of people are not impaired at that. I get the newsflash, but it is automatically $5,000. It's, you might have to go to jail. I mean, the fine, and you lose, your insurance goes through the ceiling. You have to go to classes to get your, sometimes if your license gets taken away, maybe 30 days, no driving or whatever it is, then you have to go to classes, which cost a couple of $100. I mean, something like that totally ruins your life. But if you happen to be one of the treasured overlords, you get a reprimand.
You get what you should get, which is a reprimand.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, it's crazy. We've talked about this a million times. DUI, it's a non-crime. It's not even a thought crime because you don't have to even think about hurting anybody.
Right.
You don't have to think about hurting anybody, and nobody has to get hurt, and you can still go to prison for it. And
oh yeah, well that was another thing. Absolutely, you can go to prison for a long time.
Oh yeah,
and you can. Here in Florida, I think the rule is after your third one, I think you do go to jail automatically.
There's a bunch of mandatory minimums. It has become, as we talked about, I think in the last one or one before a couple, they transfer your intent to drive they transfer that intent into intent to murder.
Right.
Basically, and there was it's a crazy situation, but there was a incident the other day, the trial from an incident where a guy in Colorado was driving his truck and plowed into a bunch of cyclists, and he got 40 years in prison. And this guy's like 55. He's a regular guy. Had too much to drink, obviously, and got in an accident, and people died, and it's horrible. But we shouldn't kill this guy also, which is what we did. We killed him. We took him out of society, and we killed him, and we're gonna destroy all the benefit that he could add to society, basically for the revenge of these other cyclists. I'm sure if you interviewed the family members of the cyclists who died, in fact, I read one of their statements, and she was like, all for it. I hope that guy rots in prison for the rest of his life. And I'm confident that all family members feel the same way. They always do. But there's a reason why we have laws in place, and it's to prevent revenge punishment, basically.
Right. Okay.
And it's to prevent, because if you let the families, like what we could do, we could just take this guy and we could throw him in a pit with the other family members, with big sticks around, and they could all beat him to death if we wanted to, or something.
Thunderdome.
That's it, Thunderdome. That's it. But no, we're like, what? Maybe this guy could add something to society, and this guy could at 56 years old or whatever, and instead he's going to get a life sentence, and nobody is going to look twice at it. It's really it's an amazing situation. Whenever I hear about the torture of Kim Jong-un and other places, I think of things like this, where we throw people in jail for life for an accident, and we have a torture chamber in every one of our jails called the hole or the boot, the dungeon, which is a solitary confinement chamber. And this guy may spend months in that place, and who knows, for an accident, basically. And so it's just it's a terrible tragedy. And DUI, I can't wait for self-driving cars to get here fast enough, because then people won't even have to worry about this anymore. You'll just get in your car, you'll be able to booze it up, no problem, and you just hit the button or tell the car, take me home, and everybody's good, and nobody has to worry about it. But until that time, it's just been getting stricter and stricter. And I saw Vince Vaughn got a DUI the other day.
Is that right?
Yeah, they always publicize another Hollywood person, and he wasn't trying to hurt anybody, but like you said, he's going to pay thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for all the stuff he's going to have to go through because of this this pre-crime.
Right.
It's non-thought pre-crime, basically.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's true. It's again, it's big money for the states. Let's face it. I mean, the fine goes to the state.
Oh yeah. Well, as soon as they figured out that they could equate it to murder somehow.
Right. And the DUI attorneys love it too, because usually if you have something like that, you have to give upfront $10,000.
Oh yeah, it's easy cash.
Easy cash.
It's most of the time you're caught red-handed, and the penalties are so steep that you better fork over the cash because you need the protection, because you don't want to go to prison for your accident or for your non-accident.
Right.
I don't think Vaughn got in an accident at all. He was just driving in a state of mind that they disapprove of.
Well, I remember, I seriously remember years ago being stopped for a DUI, and the guy said, where do you live? And I said, well, I'm over here about 10 blocks away. He says, "Well, not take it easy, okay?
Right.
Just take it easy and just remember now. Just drive
And you
careful."
obviously crashed and died.
No, not quite. Anyway, but that's again that's how it has evolved over the years. That from the MAD people, MADD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next item. This is a small item. The controversial Obama Presidential Center in Chicago will benefit from almost $200 million in taxpayer funding for the work on infrastructure projects near the center of the Chicago South Side. Now, I guess we all know that when presidents leave office, they end up with a library somewhere, Clinton Library or Bush or whatever it is. Usually, it's by donations. It's public. It's privately funded, not with Obama.
Well, are you sure that those funds? It looked to me like the 174 million was for municipal improvements on the land surrounding.
Right, a lot of it is. They said what they did is they said the Illinois lawmakers have approved $174 million for road work around the Jackson.
Right, so they're gonna put like a rail stop in there.
Yeah,
they're gonna make the roads nice and smooth
And of course, what's interesting, Mayor Rahm Emanuel said that the infrastructure improvements were money well spent.
Of course.
Bringing the Obama Presidential Center to Chicago took leadership and vision. And
there'll be a multiplier effect for every dollar that's spent.
Isn't there? So why didn't they spend $10 billion?
They should have.
Yeah,
obviously.
Even if it's 2 to 1.
Right.
You might as well. So there's but you're right, the infrastructure improvements. What's interesting to me, shoulder $500,000 overhaul above ground rail stop, other half. The Center won approval from Chicago City Council last month, despite significant resistance and protests from its opponents who were skeptical of the Obama Foundation's claim that the center will support thousands of new jobs and have a total economic impact of 3.1 billion in the first 10 years, which is 300 million a year.
Okay. No, I am not a foundation specialist, okay?
Yeah.
But help me out with this math here. Thousands of jobs.
Right.
Now let's just think about this. This is a 12-story building.
Is it?
Yeah, it's big.
Okay.
That's pretty big, but it's narrow. Okay, it's not wide. Okay, so it goes up, and how many people could possibly work in the building?
Well, they're talking about all the ancillary people.
That's what I'm getting at. But I mean, you think about the people working actually in the building. Maybe 100 or 2. I mean, maybe 200. I mean, okay, I'll give them 200. Okay, so how do you get from 200 to thousands of jobs, right?
Well, all the people that are be working at McDonald's across the street.
Okay, so there's 50.
50. Well, not to mention, of course, that Chicago and Illinois are so far broke you cannot imagine. I mean, they have no money. The education system is shot completely. And what's interesting is they're talking about infrastructure as an investment and money well spent, but they never do. I mean, it's...
Well, that's what, this to me...
Do you think there might be a cost overrun?
Well, and here's the thing. So it's going to be an NPO, right? I mean, a nonprofit, obviously.
Yeah, you mean the library itself.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So no tax rolls.
Right.
So I mean, they've got a little buffer in terms of their ability to bring in some cash because they don't have to pay out hideous taxes. So and this was parkland before, so it wasn't on the tax rolls before, probably.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I mean, I'm guessing.
Okay.
But still interesting. Thousands of jobs. Bullshit.
Right.
3.1 billion per annum or something?
No, 10 years.
10 years.
So that's 300 million a year.
300 million a year.
And remember now, but there is spending. What is it? It's 200 million in taxpayer funding.
Right.
To start it off.
P-nanny investment.
Right.
For
so
the
they're going to bring back 300 million a year supposedly for 10 years.
50%. Yeah. All right. We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Well, it's just I just find it interesting that it's controversial. But I mean, of all the people that can't afford to spend any money, it's Chicago.
I mean,
they are doomed. Now, The next item I've got, I think this might, is this the last item?
That's the Obama Center for Civil Violence, right?
Yeah, right. God almighty. Okay, this is the other thing we had here recently. I thought this was kind of fascinating. A roller coaster that derailed
Right.
in Florida. I think it was down in Orlando.
Daytona.
Was it Daytona? Okay, Daytona has been had been put out of service by state inspectors twice in the past year for deficiencies.
Okay.
Well, what they did is the state inspectors came by, the state certified experts came by, and they certified it as okay to go.
Okay.
So they fired it up, and almost immediately 2 riders fell 34 feet when the car derailed Thursday night, left dangling off the track. Firefighters used ladders to, and half because of problems, to pull 8 others to safety high above the Daytona Beach boardwalk. Of 9 passengers taken to the hospital, all but 2 were discharged by Friday afternoon. And this tells you about the state inspectors, of course. I wonder, I sort of wonder in a way, I don't know if there's going to be suits involved here, probably. I would guess that.
No, the state inspectors are covered.
Right, I know they are, but what about the company that runs the roller coaster?
Well, if they got the green light from the
light,
inspectors,
yeah.
It'll come down to whether or not there was a bribe involved or some sort of favoritism or something like that, or how much of a green light they got.
Yeah.
Well,
these problems though were corrected by the time of follow-up inspection Thursday, according to reports. So apparently they corrected all the problems, and then they immediately said, "Let's go!" And then it was Dangle City on like the first ride, I guess.
Well, this is for people who don't know. Daytona Beach is a kind of a clunky, old Florida town. It had a heyday back in the racing days.
Oh yeah, on the beach.
Yeah, because a nice flat beach, you could get up some nice speeds there.
Well, NASCAR was founded there. What's his name? Bill France.
Oh yeah,
that was all
big international speedways there.
Yeah.
It's awesome. If you're for driving that kind of stuff, but overall, it's a shoddy little place, and the boardwalk, dirty Daytona is what we call it.
Really, you're kidding?
No, man, Daytona is a junk pile, and so it doesn't surprise me a bit. I didn't even know about this roller coaster. I lived in this state for 48 years and had no clue there was a roller coaster in Daytona Beach for the last 40 of those years.
Is this 40 years old?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
You read the whole article then.
Okay.
I didn't. I just read that state inspectors had passed it, and immediately it failed.
Right. Well, to me, this must have been one. If you drive around the state, you will eventually pass a small sort of carny-style amusement park every once in a while.
Really?
Tucked away, yeah, in Pensacola, or this one's in Daytona, and there's one in Kissimmee or whatever, and there's a little, like a 6-gun territory that that kind of thing.
We used to love.
Right, and that one, of course, things break off. So yeah, these doesn't surprise me that that this thing broke, but are you not arguing for additional inspections or anything? Are you?
No. No, and I'll tell you, well, the inspections, of course, what's interesting is when you look around here, they have inspections, for instance, on all the gas tanks. You have to have a little sticker every year on the gas tank, inspected by the Department of Agriculture. They don't inspect them. They can't.
What?
There's 10 million pumps in Florida. Think about it. If you inspected one every minute, which of course you can't do, you couldn't get them all done. So somehow they mail them the sticker, I guess. And the other has to do with elevators. Regular elevators are supposed to be inspected every year. You can see the little plaque in there, and if you don't have it displayed, you can get a big fine. And one of the things that I worry about, but again, the private market figures a lot of this stuff out.
Yeah, I'm with you. From my perspective, all of those requirements that you're talking about, all those licenses could all be voluntary certifications.
They could be volunteer, but private.
Well, right, and that's what you would do is
Underwriter Laboratories.
Okay,
that's private. You get your plug or whatever, it says UL approved. That's a private.
Exactly. And if you had a roller coaster, you would call Roller Boys, and Roller Boys would come out and say, "We certify this is good," and they would have their own indemnity. Rollerboys would be bonded and and secured and whatever. So if the thing did go off, you could sue them for the damages that the poor people, the 8 people or whatever, sustained.
Well, of course, then you have to be careful that are you going to require rollerboys to have a license?
Not me.
Not me either.
But what you would do is you would call the roller people who did have the insurance. They would advertise. They would be part. You see that all the time when somebody comes for your plumbing. It says bonded and insured, and so even if you didn't require them to be bonded and insured, some people would be bonded and insured for that particular purpose, so they could advertise for that, so that you wouldn't worry about it if they blew up your house or whatever, or your roller coaster.
Yeah. Well, the licensing, of course, is, unfortunately, as you know, we talked about this many times, is onerous and very often doesn't have much to do with what you're doing.
Right. What I'm saying is you could get by with private certifications, private verifications of all types of stuff. And there should be businesses like that, like sort of a consumer reports agency type of thing, Better Business Bureau, boom, stamp of approval.
Well, what's interesting, along those same lines, how many cars and trucks now do you see, how's my driving, 1-800 so-and-so?
Right.
I mean, that's all, it's got a cell phone, okay? Who doesn't have a cell phone?
Mm-hmm.
I'm following your truck here, and the guy's all over the road.
Right.
I mean, and that's just, and it's done.
Right. Right. No license necessary.
No.
Because if that guy runs somebody off the road, he gets fired because they call him the license plate to whatever, and so his job is on the line. So you don't have to. You didn't have to be licensed.
No, it's interesting. Well, we're just about closing.
Just about got it. Let's see if I've got anything here.
Yeah, see if you've got anything here. Call me insubordinate. The other big news, which I probably don't want to cover, is the fact that the children are being ripped away from their parents.
Right. Well, we talked about that a little bit last time.
Okay.
But this story is going to come back around. We may have to do a big segment on it next time because I see it all over social media, and what people are not understanding. Even Nancy Pelosi came out and said the other day, "This is a horrible policy. Oh my God!
Right?
How can you do this?" Look, let me tell you guys something. This kind of stuff happens every day in all 50 states. The state separates families up. We shelter kids from their own parents for allegations as minor as a dirty house. I have seen kids taken from their parents.
How about kids walking home from school?
All kinds of stuff. Latchkey kids, man, no way. Okay, they're all, kids out, a 7-year-old outside of a car seat, snatch them. There are a bunch of violations. You get some kind of a driving violation, driving on a suspended license, where they arrest you and your kid is in the car. The kid's gonna be sheltered, okay? And what they do when they shelter a child, for most of the time, they take the kid, they give him a few clothes from home, they pick them up from school sometimes. There's no notice, there's no warning. They take them to another family, often across town, in a totally different part of town. They enroll them in a different school. Okay, and this is kids of all ages. I've seen 6-year-olds picked up from school, driven home, grab some clothes, kid. We're going to your new family. You're going to live there with your 9-year-old sister or whatever, and your parents can visit. They can visit you for 1 hour per week, a whole hour. Now, nobody can cry. Nobody can talk about the circumstances, okay? If the parents are seen, or the kids cry during that 1 hour, it's used against them.
Oh, wow.
They're shown to be emotionally disturbing to the children. And so the kids, you can earn your kids back over a period of about 6 months usually, sometimes 9 months, sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years. You earn your kids back by taking classes from the state at your expense, okay? And this is institutionalized in all 50 states.
Really?
Yes.
They just passed a law in Utah, or one of those places out there, where they said that free-range kids, they said they were going to allow some more free range for the kids.
Okay, maybe so, but for people to not understand that it's common practice for us to separate parents from their kids is, to me, it's just you got to see that it's going on all the time.
Well, you of course you were an attorney for those people.
Right. I was an attorney for the kids.
Right.
And so our objective was always to reunite the kids with the parents.
But DCF, which is the Department of Children and Families, their idea was not to do that.
Right. Well, that is the agency who their purview is over all the kids in the state.
Well, don't we have that in our Constitution?
Yes, it is. Here's the way it's written. The state of Florida has the ultimate and final responsibility for every minor within its borders.
Wow.
Okay, so they get the final say on what is right for your kid. And I believe other states have similar analogous statutes, not like you said in the Constitution as firmly as it is in ours, but I would bet you that this is exactly what's happening at the border right now. And if you don't like it, I'm with you. I think it's a horrible policy. I think the way that we willy-nilly break up these families without any notice or any type of, we just tear them apart, really. And then when we slowly put them back together, there's even psychology out there that says that we can't put them back together very fast, because to put them back together too fast is disruptive
Another
to them.
trauma.
It is. It's traumatic to put them back together with their family too fast. I'm not even kidding. They wean you back to your family. It's incredible. But that is the legal structure that's in place right now around the country. So people shouldn't be surprised. If it's not affecting you, it's probably because you're not poor. If you're super poor, you've probably seen this around in your neighbors' houses and things like that, if not yours. So it's unfortunate.
Well, it's interesting because Mrs. Jimmy is all against you. She says, send them back. I don't care who they are.
Well, right. Well, she's talking about immigration generally.
Right, but the point is that when they she, as far as she's concerned, if they are fleeing from certain death,
right.
Too bad. Too bad. You're not coming in here.
Right.
And of course, we do have, that's one of the ways you can get temporarily into this country is if you're certifiably being, escaping some kind of horrible regime, supposedly.
Right. Well, and it has to be a regime that was just tightened up recently. We used to, in recent years, we've been letting in people who could demonstrate that they were the victims or the potential victims of gang violence and domestic violence. Those two things have been taken off the table now. We've gone back to political violence. If you're seeking asylum from a regime, as you say, that we give more weight to than if you're just running away from bad circumstances.
Didn't used to. Yeah, to give you an example, they had this, very well known, the ship of Jews that came over here in the 30s, trying to escape from Hitler, and were not allowed to land in the United States at all. Shipped them back, and they all died from the Nazis. So.
Yeah. Well, we're better than that these
No, we are
days,
now. That was during the Roosevelt administration. So anyway, but I think that's pretty much it.
That's all I got.
Wait a minute, I had one more thing, and now I forgot. Okay. All right. Anyways, like us if you want to. Send us a note. Maybe some suggestions for what you'd like to hear us chit-chat about, and we can actually even do a little research.
Yeah. Well, we'd be happy to answer your comments, questions, concerns, and
actually, if you disagree with what we've had to say, please let us know why. Convince us.
Yeah,
that
well,
we're
absolutely.
wrong.
We'd love to have contrary opinion.
It's like what Ben Shapiro does when he gives a speech.
If you disagree with me, speak first.
Yeah. You're first in line. Yeah.
That's right. So we are coming to you live twice a week these days, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This channel on YouTube, we are the slowest growing podcast in the nation.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, that's good. Happy Father's Day to fathers.
Yep.